consolidated speaking order. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Monday, September 22nd, 2025, the committee shall resume its study of the use of offshore tax havens. I would like to welcome both our witnesses today. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will open the floor to questions. Today we have from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Chad Babin, Assistant Staff Sergeant for the Federal Police Criminal Operations Financial Crime, and Michael Sagbini, Chief Superintendent, Director General, Federal Police Criminal Operations for the Financial Crimes. So I'll give either one of you or both of you 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and honourable members of the committee. My name is Chief Superintendent Michael Sagbini. I'm the Director General for Financial Crime with the Federal Policing Criminal Operations at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. I'm also joined with Acting Staff Sergeant Chad Babin, who's a subject matter expert in financial crime within our Federal Policing Criminal Operations. I am honoured to speak to you all today from the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'll begin with a brief description of the RCMP's role. Financial crime is a priority for the RCMP and is part of its mandate to protect Canada's economic integrity. We work closely with the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, which is the lead department responsible for investigating tax evasion related to offshore tax havens. As you know, the CRA has its own investigative capacity through its Criminal Investigations Directorate and is well positioned to investigate tax evasion cases in close collaboration with law enforcement agencies like the RCMP. The RCMP plays an important support role on this issue. We are not a primary recipient of tax information, but may become involved in investigations, especially when they intersect with other criminal activities such as money laundering, fraud, and corruption. In these cases, the RCMP collaborates with the CRA, the Financial Transaction and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, better known as FINTRAC, and international partners to investigate and prosecute individuals or entities that use tax havens to hide illicit funds. We know that tax evasion and other tax crimes have serious consequences as they lower government revenue and undermine public trust in Canada's tax system. Tax-related crimes are also part of complex schemes that allow criminals to benefit from the proceeds of their crimes and use those funds to further their criminal activities. Proceeds from illegal activity are routinely wired through tax haven jurisdictions whose opaque financial structures such as offshore banks, shell companies, trusts, law firms decouple illicit wealth from its original owner. In the Government of Canada's 2025 National Risk Assessment of Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, tax evasion is listed as a high money laundering threat to the Canadian economy. Unfortunately, we know that sophisticated organized criminal groups use complex money laundering networks to leverage the global financial system to hide income and assets. This often includes using offshore locations and companies to hide and launder large amounts of money. Tackling this through a multi-agency and law enforcement approach can be effective. For example, you may be familiar with Project Collecteur, a joint investigation between the CRA's Criminal Investigations Directorate and the RCMP. This investigation uncovered a large professional money laundering network spanning several countries and leveraging money service businesses and informal value transfer systems. Several people were charged and convicted as a result of this investigation, including for tax evasion and related crimes. Many factors can impact law enforcement's ability to investigate tax evasion occurring in a tax haven. As with other kinds of financial crime, tax crime methods continue to evolve. This is particularly the case with the increasing use of digital currency which is still unregulated in certain jurisdictions and is very hard to trace. As well, the speed that digital currency moves can sometimes outpace law enforcement and other agencies' efforts. As well, transnational crime proposes jurisdictional challenges for law enforcement. Law enforcement are dependent on international partners delivering timely results. Offshore jurisdictions can sometimes delay or limit the provision of information. That said, in recent years, progress has been made in Canada and in other countries to address gaps that allow for criminals to use tax havens for their benefit. For example, new laws and regulatory requirements in Canada around beneficial ownership will assist in organized crime and money laundering investigations by
Mr.
identifying the
Sagbini,
real individuals.
Thank you. That's 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We'll move into our first round for 6 minutes, starting with Ms. Kubina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your remarks, Mr. Sabini. You brought me back to the days of when I was working in the financial sector. And we know, I think you hit the nail on the head in that these criminals are highly sophisticated. They're very fast. They adapt, and these schemes are highly complex, and they change all the time. And oftentimes, when you take a step back, you think, well, how is the law and the rules ever going to keep up with them, right? Because they're around the world, but at the same time, for the average Canadian who is working incredibly hard and abiding by the rules and paying the taxes, it can be also extremely frustrating to know that not only is the tax code so complicated that only the highly sophisticated, the people that are extremely wealthy to be, and the ones that are able to afford sophisticated lawyers and accountants will be able to find the loopholes and not pay taxes, and that's frustrating to the average Canadian. But my question to you is, what do you see as the biggest risk right now in terms of money laundering, tax evasion, and financial crime? Because it happens all day, every day, and how do we as a country keep up with that?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Mr. Chair. It's very true what you're saying. The organized crime elements are using very sophisticated methods in sheltering their money. They're using cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are very difficult. They're very difficult to trace in some instances. They're using different types of wallets that are not the typical ones that we would know that are above ground. So it becomes very difficult to have to trace it, and layering of the companies. And sometimes we have lawyers that are named in these companies, and then you've got lawyer clients, solicitor privilege, which also becomes an issue. Some of these lawyers are willingly doing it, some unknowingly doing it. So it becomes a very difficult task from a law enforcement perspective. We are looking at it from the crime. We're not looking at the tax evasion side of the house. That's a CRA mandate. We're looking at the predicate offenses, the drug trafficking that's leading to the money laundering, the frauds, the sophisticated frauds, the large frauds that are the predicate offense that are allowing them to move large funds, across.
What is the biggest risk? Like, what should we as parliamentarians focus on? Because this, like I said, happens all day.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
So what is the best way to target?
So maybe I'll pass the question over to Chad. He's in some of the working groups, so he may be able to give you more detailed answer there.
Yes, thank you. One of the larger risks or things that we have to deal with is beneficial ownership. It is a hot button topic for us. Who actually controls or owns certain trusts or corporations? Certain low tax jurisdictions have allow complex setup of trusts or corporate registries, and finding out who the actual owner of those is a challenge for the police, especially when dealing with our international partners in certain jurisdictions.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of the volume of investigations? Like, how many investigations would you typically do in a year?
I do not have that number with me, but I would be happy to provide that after.
Okay. And out of the investigations, just roughly speaking, maybe percentage-wise, how many would be actually convicted?
That I don't know as well. That PPSC would, our Crown Counsel, or the courts keep track of that number.
Okay. And I suppose on average, how long would an investigation take?
That's a good question. So some can be rather quick, and some can be quite lengthy, years. Even I'll call it a simple financial crime investigation is many months. It's not a week or two thing. But yes, several years in most cases leading up to the charges to go to trial.
Thank you. And how big of a problem do you think is the misuse of offshore tax havens and tax evasion when it comes to financial crime and its impact on Canada's economy and tax system?
Well, the numbers, I don't know exactly how much is in tax havens. I mean, it does have a large impact. I mean, those are, that's revenue that, we don't see or is provided to the government. As we alluded to earlier, the tax evasion side of the house is a CRA mandate where we're looking at the actual crime that's being committed for the money to be procured for them to send it overseas. So we do work in collaboration with CRA, but from a tax evasion perspective, that's totally on their mandate.
Last question, but very quick. How do you ensure the so-called bad actors in our society are held accountable for their financial crimes?
Just a quick answer, please.
I'm sorry?
Quick answer.
Quick answer, yeah. I mean, we're working very diligently. We're trying to, especially with fraud, where, as you mentioned, law-abiding Canadian citizens are being defrauded, et cetera. We are working very hard to hold everybody that is committing these crimes accountable to the highest standard possible. Thank you.
That's around. Next, we have Mr. Sawatsky and Mr. Littell.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for coming in today and also for all of the important work that you do. The Canada Financial Crimes Agency came out in Budget 2025. I was wondering if you could perhaps elaborate on how the RCMP is going to align its financial crime expertise with this new agency so that Canada has a modernized capacity to investigate offshore tax evasion.
Yeah, so obviously it's in its infancy stages, and we're not sure exactly how the agency is going to look. We do know that we'll be part of it. We do have, the expertise in fighting crime when it comes to financial crime. We will be working in close collaboration with this new agency, however it's going to look. And we will provide whatever support we need to provide in order to make this an effective and an efficient agency.
Are there any recommendations you'd have on how to make this most effective?
It's hard to come up with exact recommendations. I just think that anytime you work with different agencies where we can collaborate, where we can share expertise, it's beneficial. I wouldn't say like a joint, kind of like in a joint task force type unit. I think it's very important where we bring all our partners in and be able to collaborate together and work. And I think that would be an ideal situation where we share our expertise and share our resources and share best practices.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the rest of the time to Mr. Leitao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bonjour, messieurs. Merci d'être là.
Hello, gentlemen, and thank you for having joined us. Mr. Babin, you spoke at the outset of an issue that I, too, think is highly important in this discussion. Who is the beneficial owner? Who is the actual owner of any company, business that's often hidden behind a number of shell companies? So in this context, and I don't want to put you in a delicate situation, of course, if you're unable to answer my question, of course, don't answer it. But, for example, is there any information sharing with colleagues from other jurisdictions, other countries?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, we do share information with our foreign counterparts, informally and formally. Being police in early stages of investigations, informal or what we call police-to-police information sharing is very valuable when it comes to finding beneficial owners, depending on the jurisdiction we're working with. There are several networks that we're members of. I can highlight perhaps something called the ARN, the Asset Recovery Interagency Network, and it allows us to reach out to several, over 100 jurisdictions that we work with, and they can do police-to-police database checks on our behalf in their foreign jurisdiction and return that information to us so that we can begin investigating any connections to Canada or nexus to Canada from that jurisdiction, some of which are in these so-called tax havens, and they're quite cooperative.
Okay, thank you. Since you also mentioned, or one of you mentioned, and rightly so, that these days, of course, digital currencies are quite a challenge for law enforcement authorities because it makes it so easy to move money around and move money around anonymously. A lot of that is obviously unregulated. And different countries are beginning to look at ways to perhaps regulate that. In Canada, we know that the government of Canada and the Bank of Canada are looking at real-time rails, so to have a more efficient digital type currency, but that would be entirely regulated. If we are to move in that direction of having governments and central banks participate actively in kind of regulating and developing the digital currency world, what would be your recommendations? Since you've seen this world from up close, what would you say would be the main issues that you would like future regulators to address?
I mean, that's a tough one. I think we'd have to really delve into what it could look like. I mean, anytime you have some sort of regulation, anytime you have to de-anonymize yourself, where you have to put your name to an account, I mean, it makes life easier. But for how this could look like, that's something that, we could go back and see based on what we've seen in the past and what the MOUs and, the MOs of what people do. How do we best, come up with some best practices? I think that's something we could potentially go back at some point when we're ready for that and give some recommendations from a law enforcement perspective to say, hey, if we did ABC in this context, it would help us. Yeah, we'd be more than happy to be able to provide that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's around. Next, we have Mr. Garon for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I would like to get back to the KPMG issue. That's going back to 2020-21. Back then, the company, it was thought that it had developed tax evasion schemes, and a very aggressive one. There were criminal accusations laid in the United States. In Canada, we learned that evading the CRA rulings and rules, it was shown later in court document that there had been a secret agreement between the CRA and KPMG. And when we brought in the Minister of Revenue to tell us whether she should have investigated this, she said she came and told us, here, if you're unhappy with this, go and become a police officer. Would I become a good police officer? I don't think so. No, I don't need your comment on that. But do you think that if the Minister of Revenue were to use her investigation powers that she has under legislation, would this make it easier for you to carry out your work? Moreover, do you feel that even though criminal legislation differs from jurisdiction to another, one to another, when there's a criminal case underway in the United States, and at the same time you've got some secret agreement that's set in Canada, doesn't this create difficulties in your investigations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to comment on CRA's investigative postures and how they do things, well, we don't know how that all played out. They will do the tax evasion side, as we mentioned in our opening and our mandate. We do go after the criminality side and not necessarily the tax evasion, but we do work close with CRA hand in hand in dealing with, when they do a tax evasion investigation and they do see criminality, they will refer it back to us, and we will work closely together on that.
Mais si vous permettez, quand les
But with your
États-Unis...
permission, when the United States, lays criminal charges, and here in Canada there's a secret agreement that's underway, which is really not in compliance with the CRA's rulings, and the minister is not using her investigation powers, wouldn't that be something that interferes with your criminal investigation?
In this specific case, I don't know the specifics of the comments. CRA does their independent investigation, and if they do find that there is criminality in what they've uncovered within their investigation, then they will hand it over to the RCMP, and we will work hand in hand with them on whatever investigation.
Donc, j'en comprends que si la RC a de
All right, I
l'information...
understand from that if the CRA has information to the effect that there might be criminal behavior, but that for some reason decides not to send the file over to you, you can't investigate.
Well, we can, if we see that there's criminality that's part of the tax evasion, then yes, we will investigate in parallel to what the CRA will also investigate.
Tout en ayant besoin de l'information que la RC
But you
pourrait...
would need the information that the CRA would be in a position to provide you with, yes?
I can't force CRA to give us information if it doesn't meet under their mandate, or maybe they received it from a partner that they can't share with us. So there's different situations that may preclude them from being able to share. I can't speak specific to this case, but it's possible that they couldn't share for whatever reason. How they obtained it, I'm not quite sure, so I can't really speak to that specific topic.
Merci. J'aimerais revenir sur la
Thank
question...
you. I'd now like to get back to stablecoins, to virtual currency, to work using blockchain technology. We understand that the government has stated that it intends to issue a official stablecoin. People use it because SWIFT, IBAN, and so on. There are a number of bottlenecks there, difficult to send money internationally. So people have turned to stablecoin. My impression is that the regulations the Bank of Canada will apply will be to ensure that stablecoin is indeed backed by Canadian dollars and that their arrival will not have a negative effect on the Canadian financial system. Now, if we normalize the use of these currencies, even internationally, stabilize them somehow, would this be an acceptance, really, an approval of a financial tool that makes it easy, of course, to transfer money, but that also makes transfers that camouflage proceeds of crime and fraud more safe? Are we not normalizing a criminal situation?
The use of cryptocurrency itself is obviously it's not illegal. You can go buy a vehicle using a Bitcoin, right? It all depends on how you've obtained, did you sell narcotics to make your 100 million to put it into cryptocurrency to move it? That's the issue. It's not necessarily the issue of having a stable coin versus an unstable coin. It's more of us being able to trace the illegal funds that are making it
Donc,
through.
avec les 15 secondes qui me restent, donc
So
le
with
fait...
15 seconds I have left, having a stable coin, an official one, would not necessarily make your work easier or worse.
Well, I mean, it's very situational dependent. It doesn't mean if we have an unstable or it's irrelevant if it's stable, unstable. We're looking at, from a law enforcement perspective, we're looking at the crime that's being committed for that to go into cryptocurrency, whatever you want to call it. So the powers that decide on how you want, stable or unstable, really at the end of the day, from a law enforcement perspective, we're looking at the criminality that goes behind how they made the money and how they're moving it.
Thank
so
you.
It's just a tool of moving it.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Lefebvre for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today. You said, and you brought it up just recently, that methods have become more and more sophisticated. Cryptocurrency is a new reality, pretty new at least. And you've mentioned tracing where the cryptocurrency came from or what it is a proceed of. So how could we, as lawmakers, elected officials, help you with new regulations that could make your work easier? How can we be your partner in improving your work?
It's on to Acting Staff Sergeant Chad, who may have some ideas based on some of the groups that he's working with.
Yes, thank you for the question, and through the chair. Any legislative changes to improve access to banking transactions, including cryptocurrency transactions, are always being looked at by us and through our Government of Canada partners. We also work collaboratively with many of our Government of Canada partners on disruption efforts, especially around movement of funds. So should we not be able to necessarily criminally investigate something, we are looking at how to leverage different powers of different Government of Canada departments to mitigate criminality, prevent criminality, and basically make criminal activity in Canada difficult so that people will either cease or move on. Also increased tracing or analytic tools are always heavily leveraged by police. Cryptocurrency is traceable, and we do trace it, and we use different technologies for that, including exploring AI options to help us make networks behind that.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. In a 6th of November press release, you mentioned that only 5 to 6% of fraud incidents and laundering criminality in Canada are brought to your attention. You have a new international system allowing people to report on this. Could you tell us a bit more about this new program?
That's something we can go back on. I want to give you more of a fulsome answer to that. So if we can come back with a written response on that with the international organization, can you just maybe give me more specifics as to which group you're referring to?
Ben, écoutez, on l'avait ici.
Well, listen, we had it here in the 6th of November press release, the new International Cybersecurity and Fraud Information or Informant Program. This is something that you issued. So could you just give us a quick overview of the new system that you helped set up?
Question. So we do through the Cyber Center. We do have if you want to call it like an intake where people can report their frauds and anything that they've encountered. As we know, there's multiple frauds that are happening from a bank sending you or alleged bank sending you a message to romance scams. There's a lot of frauds that are happening that it allows a one-stop, if you want to call it a one-stop shop for the Cyber Center to receive all these frauds, and it gets dispersed, depends if it should go to a police of jurisdiction. If it happened, let's say, in the city of Montreal, we'll work with the Montreal police, or wherever the jurisdiction is of that crime, we will work with whatever police of jurisdiction to fan out those complaints and allow the police to deal with all those specific complaints. In terms of statistics, I don't have those statistics available, but all that I understand is it's working well, and it, like I said, having one point of contact for the general public to know where to go is a very effective and efficient tool.
Merci beaucoup. On a eu une
Thank you
affirmation.
very much. We were told that tax havens constitute a method to ensure that to get the taxes paid here in Canada. So what do you think of that, that it's a method to get the taxes that are paid here in Canada?
That I can't comment on. That's a more of a CRA question in terms of the offshore money and tax havens. Like I said, we deal with the criminality that gets the money that gets sent out. But in terms of tax evasion and tax havens, that's more of a CRA question.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. McDonald for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. In our budget 2025, we introduced a national anti-fraud strategy. And in 2024 alone, we've seen Canadians lose $643 million to fraud. So that was a 300% increase since 2020, with only a small fraction of those scams been reported for investigation. So from the RCMP's perspective, what factors are driving this rapid rise in fraud, particularly the scams that are targeting seniors, and how is your policing adapting to the investigations of this higher technology fraud?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. The issue with these frauds is they're becoming more sophisticated, they're becoming more obfuscated, and in a lot of times it's happening in countries that we don't have relationships with Canadian government, law enforcement, so it makes it extremely difficult. Some of these countries, there's rampant corruption, so if we do deal with the local police, there's nothing's going to come of it. Some instances there potentially the government or police are involved, so it makes it extremely difficult. There's also an education piece, I think, that we need to really push to our seniors, to even our young folks who are on cell phones, and they're moving so fast and they're just clicking and they're not even realizing what they're clicking. Next thing you know, they're in some sort of scam, or now someone's got access to their phone or to their bank account information. So I think education is a big piece for us. But these are really long, drawn out, in some cases they're using, different email servers to obfuscate where they come from. Is it in a country we can't deal with again? So it's sophisticated. The ones that we do find, we are very serious in investigating them, obviously, and prosecuting them. And then that's another thing, is the prosecution side. And when you have something that's so sophisticated, it becomes a very complex case for the Crown, and it gets drawn out. It's a long, with disclosures and dealing with other countries and what they can share and what they can't share. So it becomes a very complicated affair.
So your answer kind of leads me into another topic, and it may be varying a little bit from tax avoidance, but I've had interactions with constituents very concerned with sextortion, and the online harms bill was introduced last year, but it didn't pass, and now we're going to be introducing new legislation. Would you comment on, the ability to prosecute these offenders who may be based in a foreign country like Nigeria, for instance, in the situation I'm referring to? Where do we put the onus? Does it have to go on the platform providers? And I'm talking about youth or, teenage children.
I think there's a role to play. I think everyone has a bit of a role to play there. I think service providers, I think there's a role there to play as well. But you're absolutely right. It would be difficult in dealing with some of the countries that we do see, and these criminals are using those countries because they know it makes it difficult for law enforcement to deal with that country because there is the corruption and the lack of relations between the two countries. We have liaison officers that are around the world in different countries that, we will have a director in an area that's responsible for 5, 6, 7 countries. We continually go into those countries to build our relationships. But it's definitely a work in progress in terms of building those relationships and the willingness of that host country to actually work with us, because I think there's a lot of corruption that's happening, and it's in their best interest to keep it going.
So finally, getting back to money laundering, you mentioned in your opening statement that you work cooperatively with CRA, FinTrack, other organizations, provincial regulators, obviously, to investigate these complex financial crimes. What improvements would you recommend legislatively to members of Parliament to improve the ability to investigate?
Quick answer, please.
Sorry?
Quick answer.
Okay, I'll let Chad answer that one.
Quickly, increased access to tax records would be faster access to tax records would be a big help.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Garon for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Liberal colleagues mentioned, the government mentioned in its recent budget a little earlier this year, they published this strategy to combat fraud, a new infrastructure being created to better counter fraud. The Minister of Finance announced that. So we were not so sure this would work because we have the impression that this is just shifting the names of administrative structures that already exist but without new financing. So when it comes to combating fraud, criminal crime, if we compare the jurisdictions in which you work or that you know of, are we one of the countries that provides a good deal of resources, sufficient resources, funding to police officers and compliance agencies, or do you think we should invest a good deal more to give you better tools, especially given that your work is becoming more and more complex?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to speak on behalf of other organizations or other groups, but I can tell you at the RCMP, we're continually looking at resources and where our resources are better placed. Currently, within our financial crime unit and our units, I would say we're adequately staffed where we need it. We're continually looking at how crimes are evolving. Today we might have a big investigation in cryptocurrency. We might take some of our money laundering folks and augment that, person power, if you want to call it, and vice versa. So we're constantly evolving and looking at where we can better put our
si vous me permettez de vous interrompre, plus
But if I may
succinctement,
interrupt, a little more succinctly, do you feel that in the complex financial world of today, do you think that the RCMP lacks financial resources to really fulfill its mission?
I think, if you're asking me, I think anytime we have more resources anywhere, I think having more resources in anything is more efficient. You can always do more with more, obviously, but I think we have the resources to adequately do what we're doing today. There's always evolving technologies. You had mentioned technologies. There's technologies that we're always looking at to enhance, cryptocurrency tracing, cryptocurrency wallets, et cetera. There's things that we're always looking at to try to enhance, because as you know, when the criminal gets ahead, we're a little, it's almost like a cat and mouse game that we're trying to always get there.
Thank you, Mr. Sagbini. That's the time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kelly for 5 minutes.
Chair, do you find that criminal organizations, the ones that you investigate, is it common for them to use tax havens to hide their gains and both to hide, I guess, their gains from the police, but also from law enforcement, but also to avoid taxes?
I mean, I can start, and then maybe Chad can jump in. Thank you for the question. I do believe, yes, they do use tax havens to hide and launder their money. They also, use the cryptocurrency exchanges as well. That's another piece. But yes, in short answer, yes, they do. I don't know if Chad, if you want to add anything to that.
That's good. That's the answer is a good answer or a complete answer. Which leads to my next question. The CRA told us a few weeks ago that they had only referred and had successfully seen through 14 prosecutions for offshore tax avoidance since 2000, so a little less than 3 per year. How many charges have you laid in relation to, let's even go the broadest category of files that you investigate? Like, how often are you laying charges for tax avoidance, or fraud, money laundering, all the things under your?
So there's a distinction there between the predicate offenses and the money laundering, and then just having your money in a tax haven. Having your money in a tax haven on its own, for us, that's a CRA mandate. It's not a crime. Right.
I'm asking. So for these predicate offenses, which could be any of a number of things, how often is your department as the senior, so the national organization investigating?
We'd have to get you the statistics if that's what you're looking for. We don't have it on hand. And then I think the important thing to your question, too, if I may ask, is you were talking about prosecutions versus charges?
Yes.
Because that's two different things, right?
I understand, but charges are what you do. That's why I'm asking you about charges.
Exactly. So we can come back with that. Okay. We don't have that statistic on hand.
Okay. Let me ask about cooperation with the CRA. So you are investigating predicate offenses. You're leaving just simple people that are taking lawfully earned profits and not paying taxes on it. That's the CRA's issue. But you are dealing with in cases where the profits are not legally gained. Do you find that you have, in your cooperation, are you a net sender or recipient of information with the CRA? I presume you refer files to the CRA.
We do refer to the CRA. The CRA will refer something back to, let's say in an example of they're looking at a tax evasion, simply a tax evasion, and then they come across a criminality that comes with it, then they'll refer it to us. So it's a two-way street. We'll refer either way. And sometimes we would collaborate together. Sometimes we work independent of each other.
I got lots of questions in little time. I want to ask about financial institutions. How do you characterize the level of cooperation you get? And this goes back to, as Ms. Cabina also said, I have working history in the finance sector, and it always seemed that the banks were reluctant to share information about what goes on in their own shop in fraud cases. Do you find that you get cooperation from the banks? Is it getting better or worse?
So we have great cooperation with the banks. We're the new IMLIP, the Integrated Money Laundering Intelligence Partnership, that was announced. We're working closely with the banks on information sharing. We're in the process of information sharing agreements with the banks to enhance our.
You have agreements that are not executed yet, but you're working on them?
Yes, correct.
Okay. One last question. The former finance minister had, goes along with a question we had earlier about legislative steps. I think Mr. McDonald asked about that. So one of the former finance ministers had called for a review of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act. It's overdue for review. It hasn't happened. It doesn't appear to be picked up by the government currently under the new minister. How important is that, and what would you like to see from that review?
Just a quick answer, please.
Yeah.
Reviewing of any legislation and keeping up to date is always important. And with that, any review in our world, information sharing is always a key factor to look at.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Turnbull for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Superintendent, I'll start with you.
Ryan.
So you had mentioned in your opening remarks that some progress has been made with new laws and regulations. I wondered if you could comment on, I know the beneficial ownership registry is about to come into effect, will be operational by the end of 2025, which is this year, so that's coming very shortly. And you had started to say when you ran out of time, just how that was one of the things you could cite as helping with these very complex cases. Could you speak to how meaningful the beneficial ownership registry is for your investigations?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Chair, it allows us to start unraveling, if you want to call it, or unpeeling of the onion in trying to figure out who is actually running these companies as opposed to having it extremely layered. So just having that registry on its own might seem like a simple tool, but it's simple but strong in terms of allowing us to properly conduct our investigations.
Great. Similarly, I wondered if you could comment on whether I think there's been some additional federal resources dedicated to kind of going after the professional enablers they're referred to. You know, these are the lawyers, accountants, consultants, and others that help enable people to set up these complex structures that end up avoiding or evading taxes. Can you speak to whether there's been any progress on that front?
Do you want to take this one, Chad?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we work with CRA specifically through our IMLET teams, our Integrated Money Laundering Investigative Teams. They're located across the country and in key areas. Their mandate is to investigate professional money launderers and enablers. They've been, I believe, about 5 years in existence, and we've seen a lot of success through those units. Collect R is a good example of a file out of one of those units, the one that Sir spoke about. Thank you.
Okay, great. So those are two useful, sounds like initiatives that are making some progress. How about the whole of government national anti-fraud strategy, which we announced, and the Financial Crimes Agency? Do you think that's going to aid you in being able to crack down on some of these complex financial crimes?
So I think with the Financial Crime Agency, I think it'll be a way for us to work hand in hand in terms of having potential expertise there, maybe more on the civilian expertise side that could assist in certain complex investigations. I think from a fraud perspective, I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of how many times do we get messages a day on our emails or text messages that are fraudulent. So I think maybe having kind of like a clearinghouse of sorts might be beneficial there to allow it to be looked at, because I'm sure some of the people behind it might be doing it not just doing one fraud, multiple frauds. So
right.
It'll be allowing us to put it together.
Yeah, and I know we've also committed to hiring another 1,000 RCMP officers and increasing resources to federal prosecution service, which you had mentioned earlier. I'm assuming that those resources are going to help aid in your investigations as well. You had mentioned earlier that you felt you were fairly adequately resourced in your unit. But can you talk about how those additional resources will aid in cracking down on tax evasion?
What we've seen is out of the 1,000, there may be 150, I believe, coming to financial crime. So we're not sure yet where those resources were. Once we see where they're going to come to, we'll assess better where those resources would be going. So I think it's important for us to kind of look and take stock of where we need to augment ourselves.
And the Federal Prosecution Service, I assume that's going to help to prosecute some, I know the other members were
not to speak on their behalf, but I'm assuming, I would just, as a assuming person, saying that if you had more prosecutors, more would go through the courts. That's just an assumption, but
This is certainly why the government has made, I think, additional commitments. So that's great. Any additional clarity you can give us on any other progress that you had referenced in your opening remarks that you didn't get a chance to finish? I think you were going to refer to a number of other things, but maybe you could also take a second, go back.
Just a quick answer,
I was almost
please.
at the end, but there's been a lot of progresses in just our partnerships with our partners, internationally, our partners domestically, where we're working more collaboratively. Especially on cryptocurrencies, we hold a lot of training where we have municipal, provincial, international partners that come on these training, and that also builds on our network. So if someone from the OPP or SQ or someone that's come on our course, they can either reach back into us or reach back into someone that was on the course. So we're building these networks of financial crime experts.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have enough time for one more round, so I think that if you guys are all okay with it, we could do 3 minutes each party. Yeah? So I'll hand it over to the Conservatives for 3 minutes. Ms. Cabina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got caught off in the last conversation where we were talking about how do we hold these bad actors accountable? Because of course the concern is that we don't have you don't have the number of investigations or the number of charges. These bad actors may just get a slap on the wrist, or maybe they get charged and there's a fine, and well, that's the cost of doing business, because it is highly profitable to engage in financial crime and tax avoidance. So can you please speak to how do we hold these bad actors accountable?
So I mean, from a law enforcement perspective, all the complaints that we do receive, obviously we take them very, very seriously. We investigate them, to the capacity and to lay charges. In terms of what happens later, in terms of the court process, in terms of, sentencing, that's outside our scope. But what I can reassure you is when we do receive complaints, we are investigating them to the fullest capability, and we are charging. But again, what happens later, that's kind of out of our purview. But
yeah, if you could submit to the committee the statistics and the data, that'd be great, just to get a sense of the problem. But also, there has been an increase in financial crime. Can you speak to why do you think this is the case? Like, what's driving this increase?
I think part of it, and Chad, you can jump in as well, but I think part of it too is, everything's electronic. Everything's electronic now. Most people are banking electronically. Most people are on their phones, emails. It's easy. You're more easily susceptible to being defrauded just by the mere amount of data and electronics that we use on a daily basis. We've got elderly now that might not necessarily know how to use these technologies. There's AI, there's the deep fakes. Like, it's, we can talk about this for half a day on how much fraud, how you can be defrauded. I think it's just because of the technologies today and how they're easily accessible.
Thank you for that.
Or exploitable, sorry.
Yeah. And based on your experience, what are the weaknesses in Canada's corporate financial and reporting systems that are most commonly exploited by individuals or corporations using offshore tax havens or financial crime?
A quick answer, please.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Quick answer would be, beneficial ownership and transparency and trusts.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Swatsky for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Could you speak a bit more about the increase in AI deepfake scams, and what are some of the most common methods used?
So thank you for the question. Through you, Chair, I mean, some of the stuff we've seen is the AI deepfakes, where it's voice recognition, where your bank, let's say, has a voice recognition feature, and someone has your voice and uses that to authenticate.
Yeah, I don't use that.
We've seen where emails come through to a company saying, "Hey, I'm so-and-so CEO. Can you please forward $50,000 to this company where, they just did they did ABC for us. So the technology of AI in terms of like the deep fakes and the facial and the voice is what we've seen now. I don't know how that's going to morph. It might morph into something more complicated or more sophisticated, but that's what we're seeing on the surface right now.
Thank you. And when it comes to text message scams, I know a lot of people get, in fact, during this conversation, I got a text message scam of we are hiring. So where are these coming from, and how can we start trying to stop these text messages from coming in?
So it's a great question. We do have, we are working with some of our telcos to say, how is this happening? How are the numbers being spoofed? Obviously, the number you received it from, if you call that number back, it'll be some person that just answers and hello, and you're like, hey, did you just call me? No, it wasn't me. So obviously their numbers are being spoofed. So we're trying to figure out through our telcos. We think a lot of it's coming from overseas. Some might be domestic, but we're trying to figure that out with the partnership with our telcos.
And can somebody who takes part in this scam, can they be charged?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We'd have to investigate to see, what came of it. Like maybe this person is really hiring, right? And they got your resume versus, hey, click on this. It's going to take you to a site. We need to get into your computer because, you have a virus, and the next thing you know, they have access to everything. So everything it would be unique to each situation.
And so would you need to have been scammed in order for them to get charged, or could they be charged just by sending something in hopes of scamming?
Yeah, we'd have to look at it. We'd have to delve into how. I mean, spoofing a number on its own. We'd have to, that's something we'd look at as an offense. Spoofing people's numbers and spamming and et cetera. So, yeah, and it's happening so often that the prioritization of these scams, like it's important to be able to protect our most vulnerable.
Thank you. It's time. Next, we have Mr. Garon for 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking a lot about crypto and big international matters. It's certainly the current style. Also, telephone fraud, scams targeting elders, and so on. There is the Canadian Bankers Association, working with the RCMP and other organizations as well, have started a publicity campaign to raise awareness, telephone operators and internet companies and so on, to ensure that everyone is on the same page, working to ensure that frauds don't happen. I favor that. It's a good initiative. I even supported an event here on the Hill to raise awareness about this, but I don't think that we are rendering the banks as responsible as they should be. You say that all players have to play their part. When an elder has 3 times loses $500 in the middle of a Saturday evening, and the banks say, well, this happened to an entrepreneur in my riding. She had funds taken from her bank over and beyond the bank's maximum withdrawal levels, and she was actually accused by the bank itself. It looks to me that banks need to bear more responsibility, and if they were in part responsible for the financial losses, then they would ensure that prevention is tougher. Could that be an element that could eventually reduce the numbers of frauds, making banks more responsible for them? Because, it's from the bank account that the money is being taken out, after all.
Totally understand. And in these cases, it's very important that it gets reported to the police of jurisdiction, whatever area your constituent or whoever gets defrauded, because it becomes very important that they will start an investigation with the bank, in collaboration with the bank, to see what exactly happened. It's always favorable to have the police response that
Mais
could,
au-delà
that
de ça, la question, je suis d'accord
Right,
avec vous.
but
en
over
disant-
and beyond that, and I fully agree with what you've just said, though, if banks do, under legislation or regulations, were made responsible for what's going on in people's bank accounts, as is the case in the UK, don't you think the banks would set in more measures to ensure that these frauds wouldn't occur, or at least wouldn't occur as often? And we wouldn't need to turn to the police because, of course, ideally in life, we like police officers, but we'd rather not have to deal with them.
Yeah, I mean, for legislative questions, I'll leave that to the experts here at Parliament to decide how that would come out. From a law enforcement perspective, like I said, I highly recommend a police presence in those calls, and we could work with the bank. But legislative, I'll leave it to the legislative experts.
Thank you. That's the time for today. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Is it the will of the room to adjourn the meeting? All right.
Okay, so as I said, we're only watching this for an hour because it's only scheduled for an hour. We are now going to switch to the Environment Committee. Bit of a different topic. We've got the Liberal Minister of Climate Change discussing her mandate. So we'll go ahead and switch over to that.
Also to look at other innovative methods. So as an example, I can say we have regulations on methane. And in Canada, we have several companies that are leaders in, world leaders, in fact, in the reduction of methane, or discover when there are leaks. So in Montreal, there is such an example. There is a company that does a lot of work to look for leaks. So that way, industries can quickly take action to stop this. And this company was at one time one of the top 100 companies of clean tech companies in the world. And this was worldwide. And it's from Montreal, this company. So when we have regulations that show that there is a need, this also helps to create a market for those very technologies. And it means that we can have in Canada companies that are innovative and that can find markets. And we are seeing this, and this is the time to continue this work. Thank you. This is a very innovative. Gigi said, yeah, we're very, very proud that Montreal has this company, such an innovative company. Now, you also talked about industrial carbon pricing, and you've shown about studies that said that it doesn't actually increase the price of food. For example, could you produce such a report for this committee, and could you possibly comment on these one of these reports? There are several aspects. I think that it was in the Agriculture Committee that the president of Costco said that very thing. He said that industrial tariffication of carbon did not. He said that climate change is what actually changes the price of food. So when we see that the price of food is actually increasing, many people in industry will say that it's actually because of climate change. But when it comes to industrial tariffication and the impact that it has on food prices, there was a report from the Climate Change Institute that showed with examples how this actually does not have an effect on the price of food. And I'm very happy to give a copy of this report to this committee because it's important to look at this. And we need to look at, we've got to make we have to look at the fact that the price of food is increasing, but it's not because of climate industrial tarification. It's because of climate change. You're right. It's good to get information. Last week, I went from Montreal to Toronto to a conference, and I actually took the train, and it took 3 hours. So I'm so glad to hear that the time for a high-speed train could go down to 3 hours. Could you explain what the economic benefits would be for such a project, the high-speed rail? One of the most exciting projects for me when we're talking about large projects for Canada, a good example is the high-speed rail project, because it really shows how we can better connect cities and provinces such as Quebec and Ontario. It also shows how we can help people just to travel from one place to another in a comfortable and rapid manner. And like I say, taking a train between Montreal and Toronto can take upwards of 6 hours now. But of course, a high-speed rail could also reduce emissions, not to mention it would create a huge number of jobs for workers and steel. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have 5 minutes here. Madam Minister, you said that in spite of what Mr. Guilbeault said, that it would be dishonest to tell Canadians that Canada cannot reach its targets for 2030, and you say it will. So how concretely can we do this? How can we expect for you to show us something that would allow us for you to believe you? Because you're saying Mr. Guilbeault, the PBO, and first of all, I never said Mr. Guilbeault was dishonest. I want to be very clear because I have so much respect for Mr. Guilbeault. I have never used those words. I want to be very, very clear. Yes, but he says you're being dishonest when you're saying we're going to reach our targets. No, what I'm saying, and I've said so several times, these targets are ambitious. We know that. We knew that when we set them up, but we need all the provinces to do their work as well for us to be able to reach these targets. We can reach these targets. We must try to reach these targets. And I hope that everybody here around this table agrees that we must continue to do this work. How can we believe you, Madam Minister? When are you going to show us something that shows that you're right when everybody says that we're going backwards? Well, in our competitivity strategy, we have said that we are going to be reinforcing industrial tarification. Yes, but your competitiveness strategy is going to reduce GHG emissions, but how? Do you have a document to prove this? We will be tabling a document before the end of the year on the progress for our reduction on emissions. So you're going to show us a document by the end of the year that Canada can reach these targets. Is that right? So by the end of the year, you're going to show us a document that Canada can meet its targets. It will show us where we're at. And it's my job to continue to do this. The other choice is that we don't do anything. We don't try. Yeah. So this job isn't done yet. Okay. So did you evaluate the impact of removing regulation on clean electricity when it came to the reduction of GHG emissions? How is it going to increase how much is going to increase the emissions? No, I'm not. I don't agree with this. I didn't say it was removed. So under the regulation, I can, and just like with industrial tarification, I can make agreements with the provinces to show that we can meet our targets. Yes, but with Alberta, you're going to take it out. No. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Minister for this appearance. The officials will remain for the remainder of the meeting, and the meeting will...
How much are they going to save in 1 year? $140. A single senior in the first income tax bracket is the biggest loser here, only $50 in savings. But if you compare that to, say, a senior couple in the second income tax bracket, they're going to save $680. So the discrepancy between people who are in the first bracket and later on in the second and third and fourth and fifth income tax brackets is crazy, because when we look at cost of living, we know it's seniors on a fixed income that are disproportionately impacted. When we look at single mothers with children trying to put healthy food on the table, nutritious food on the table, they are struggling. And this particular tax break shows that they're basically getting the amount of a couple loaves of bread, a couple packages of sandwich meat. That's about what it would amount to. So if they truly wanted to tackle the affordability issues, I've outlined a few areas, and there's many others I'm sure I can get to in the Q's and C's, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the time.
Questions and comments. Question and commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's interesting, the member made reference to industrial carbon tax, and this is something, even if you take a look at the Alberta Premier, which is conservative, by the way, supportive of industrial carbon
Kevin
tax.
really used his
But
balloon
my
today.
question is related to Bill C-4. Bill C-4 is a very powerful piece of legislation that enables literally millions, over 22 million Canadians to get a tax break. The Conservatives like to talk, and talk is cheap when it comes to delivering on important issues, because they like to filibuster things along to prevent laws from passing. My question to the member is, back in the day, I guess 2015, 2016, the Conservatives voted against a tax break for Canada's middle class. I'm wondering if he gave his commitment, not only will they vote in favour of this bill, but they'd like to see this bill passed before the end of the year.
The Honourable Member for Swift Current, Grasslands, Kindersley.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And like I told the member, I mean, this bill's got some conservative values and conservative principles in it here. So I mean, if they're starting to run out of ideas, I mean, this is Bill C-4. It's only the fourth piece of legislation that this place saw, and already they're trying to plagiarize conservative ideas and principles in here. So, I mean, of course, we're all for tax breaks for Canadians, and we'd like to see the government take it even a step further, because we know that when you look at the tax that's collected, it's not even enough to cover the cost to service the debt load that they're saddling onto the next generation of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. So it's time for them to start talking and doing things about trying to increase productivity in Canada as well. Canadians need to see their paychecks go further and be able to do more, and that would solve a lot more than the government coming up with more programs that don't actually help Canadians.
Question and commentaire.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from southern Saskatchewan. I enjoyed his speech, particularly when he referred to the sawmills that were closed in Quebec, and that is the case in my riding in Amos with the Arbec sawmill. I'd like to hear what solutions that he would like to see in this bill. For example, the Bloc Québécois is calling for 50% of countervailing duties. We know that the federal government can borrow money to help people invest on the ground. In a context, what we're calling for with this bill here is to lower taxes. What does that mean? It means that we're going into deficit to give people money, but the generational debt is going to stay there. Should we instead have invested this money elsewhere, particularly in our forestry sector? Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Swift Current, Grasslands, Kindersley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for the question, because he's right. The forestry sector is one of the breadwinners for Canada, or at least historically it has been. This government has completely abandoned and neglected them. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen more measures that would actually support economic growth, because that is what the forestry sector does bring. And unfortunately, that member's riding has been decimated by bad Liberal policy, again, ignoring getting a trade deal done with the United States. But we know that we need more demand for these products also in Canada. Housing starts are still going down and down across this country. If the government could get out of the way so we could actually truly enable home building to happen, the forestry sector would continue to go up and up and up, and we'd be able to have more places to use these products and here in Canada. And the government just can't quite figure out how to take advantage of this strategic asset that we have.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Glenbrook, Brant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Feed Ontario Hunger Report came out in recent days, and the numbers were actually very shocking. We saw an increase in seniors. There's an increase in people who are working that are accessing food banks, in people with disabilities. And so my question to my colleague, who cited some of the disparity in the savings on taxes with this bill from single seniors, single parents, is Given a bill that's called Making Life More Affordable for Canadians Act, does it accomplish that at all, and what should have been done differently?
The honourable member for Swift Current Grasslands, Kindersley, in about 40 seconds.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker, because while there is little income tax relief in this bill, the cost of inflation, the cost of food continues to go up and up and up. I keep track over the price of butter, for example, Mr. Speaker, and just in the last year, it's gone up $2 at my local grocery store. And there was an article by Policy Options magazine that says that 10 million Canadians live in food insecure households. The federal budget doesn't help them. That's a quarter of Canadians that are food insecure, and this bill does nothing to actually help those Canadians to be able to get out of that particular position. And if the government was serious, this is the kind of things that they would look to address.
Reprise du débat, resuming debate. The honourable member for Markham, Unionville.
The heck?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Who's running the tech room today?
Comes to their overall approach in bills like C4. Get out of the way. On the surface, the Liberals are selling Bill C4 as a way to give a tax break to 22 million Canadians, among other components. That's the headline. That's the label on the package.
They can't even get the camera on the right speaker. Anyway, we are switching back over to environment. I don't know who the heck is running the tech sector on this Monday. Oh, no, they're not back? Okay.
We have just passed a new budget running a $78 billion deficit. The government is adding $90 billion in new spending. Mr. Speaker, that's $5,000
Order. We do have a point of order from the honourable member for Louis-Saint-Laurent-Akia-Wenrack.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to apologize to my colleagues.
They still have their
but
camera
there is some
stuck.
Technical problems. I appreciate very much all my colleagues here, but the camera is not focused on the speaker. And I'm sure that there is a lot of people who have noticed that, so I invite everybody to, well, obviously, it reminds me of my good old days when I was a TV journalist, but maybe we can fix it right now.
I do thank the honourable member for his intervention. What I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause for just a second, and then we'll invite the member to. So I'm just going to ask the member to just to hold on for just a brief intervention, and I will consult with the table. I thank the honourable member.
So they got the intern working the tech room today. Okay, anyway, the committee's back, finally. And I'm going to have to edit that audio where I caught the music.
Thank you for the question. We've got a well-defined process and approach for fulfilling our obligations, both our legal duty to consult, but also the government's commitments under the UN Declaration. As you noted earlier in your remarks with the Minister, through the Impact Assessment Act, there are many specific provisions and commitments throughout the assessment of major projects that are articulated to support fulfillment of these obligations. And through the creation of Bill C5, through the creation of the Major Projects Office, the government has been very clear that its commitment both to our legal obligations, legal duty to consult, but also our commitments to the UNDA continue to hold. And so through our assessment process on major projects, we are committed to striving to achieve consent. And there's a well-defined approach and process through the assessment process to
Okay, thank you for bringing up Bill C5 and the Major Projects Office, because that was my next question. It's my understanding that the Major Projects Office will not have any substance underneath it to fulfill the obligations that it's been tasked with. So I'm assuming that the Major Projects Office will rely heavily on the existing processes to deal with those legislative requirements and regulatory requirements for that matter. Am I correct, or is the Major Projects Office going to develop its own procedures and regulations and whatnot?
So I think it's a combination. So through the new legislative framework, there are specific procedures and steps that the government must take in designating a project.
So the Major Projects Office will develop its own regulations in response to fast tracking, or will it rely heavily on existing legislation regulations?
So both. Because there are new steps that are taken into consideration and a government decision to designate a project under Bill C-5.
Oh, I see.
But if something is designated under Bill C-5...
That's more enabling legislation, though, so I don't think they're going to rework the existing legislation or regulations.
Right. So once a project is designated under Bill C-5, if that were to happen, processes and approaches, including the Impact Assessment Act, if it were to apply in the absence of C5, would continue to apply moving forward. So those same approaches and processes that we have in place would continue to apply.
Thank you. And the projected window is 2 years in terms of fast tracking, and it's still yet to be determined if the pipeline from Alberta to BC will be fast tracked. And that's not a definite. There are a lot of ifs and ands in that MOU. But in terms of that fast tracking, has your departments been told about fast tracking First Nations interests in relation to this pipeline in the 2-year window?
So we have adopted a service standard of 2 years, not just for projects that undergo C5, but for all major projects. So all projects that are subject to the Impact Assessment Act, we are working towards being able to deliver assessments within a 2-year timeline, including our legal duty to consult and our commitments to Indigenous groups as part of these assessment processes.
But the 2-year timeline you're talking about, that's just a guideline, though. That's not a set time limit, right?
The legislation, our legislation has maximum timelines established in the legislative framework. But we're setting service standards within those.
For Aboriginal rights and title consultation accommodation to be concluded, there's a 2-year time limit?
Not in the legislative framework, no.
In the regulatory framework?
No. But there is a maximum timeline within the legislation. But within that legislative timeline, we are establishing service standards of 2 years that will apply for all major projects. So
but I'm talking about Aboriginal rights and title consultation accommodation. But you just said that there's a maximum timeline for Aboriginal rights and title issues within that. So is there a time limit, 2-year time limit for Aboriginal issues under the fast tracking proposal, nation building, C5? Is there a time limit for Aboriginal rights and title issues to be resolved?
The government's committed to a 2-year service standard for reviewing all major projects.
I understand that, but the specific question
consultation obligations.
Is there a time limit for Aboriginal rights and title consultation accommodation obligations?
There is a target, a service standard, yes, of 2 years.
But it's not a hard target. It can't be a hard target.
It's a service standard, right? So it's not a legislative timeline.
But it's not a hard target because you can't put an arbitrary time limit on rights and title interests. You can't do that. The case law is pretty clear on that.
So we have a goal. It's a goal. It's
I understand the goal. I get that. And it's probably aspirational. I get all the political terms. But there is no hard
I don't get this line of questioning
on addressing and resolving Aboriginal rights and title issues. Is there?
As I mentioned, we aim to carry out these consultations and deliver our process within 2 years, and we will be aiming to fulfill our obligations within that 2-year service standard. But there may be situations that we would consider deviations.
Mr. Ross. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. The floor is yours, Mrs. Midima, for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for coming today. I would like to first talk about an issue that's had a huge impact on my community in Halifax and, of course, across.
Did you guys see that? I think the minister left.
In our country that pose a real threat to the health and well-being of all Canadians. One of the major threats to public health, and particularly the health of our firefighters, is exposure to toxic flame retardants found in household products. So I think this might be a question for Ms. Johnson. Can you describe what federal actions are being taken by the department in partnership with Health Canada to address this issue?
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I thought I had to push the button and get used to that. Thanks very much for the question, and I actually will pass it over to my colleague Megan Nichols to speak a bit about our chemical management plan and some of the work that we're doing there.
Certainly. Our chemical management plan has been in place for many years now, and it helps to ensure that we have a solid risk management framework in place for any substance that could have deleterious effects on human health or the environment. So we have put in place tools for hundreds of substances in conjunction with Health Canada over the years to make sure that we are protecting our human health and environment from these types of chemicals. And it applies to a very wide range of things that are listed under our Canada Environmental Protection Act, which then enables us to put in place measures, sometimes regulations, but sometimes it's voluntary agreements with industry and a wide range of tools.
Okay, and those flame retardants are part of that work. Okay.
That's right. We actually just recently put in place a new State of Science report on what we call the PFAS forever chemicals. And that will enable us to put in place a phased approach to dealing with PFAS over time. We already have some measures in place to deal with the most egregious firefighting foams, but we will be able to, under the new regulations that we're bringing forward, to make sure that all firefighting foams are covered over time. And then we will then continue to extend the approach to other substances where PFAS are found.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. In 2023, Parliament passed Bill C-226, the National Strategy Respecting Environmental Racism and Environmental Justice Act. Work to address environmental racism in our country actually started with, or largely started with, detailed research and community engagement that was done by Dr. Ingrid Waldron in my province of Nova Scotia. C-226 aims to correct historical injustices by addressing the disproportionate impacts of pollution on marginalized communities, which has happened in Nova Scotia and across the country. Despite the bill passing into law, many Canadians don't understand exactly what environmental racism means. And in fact, there's a report for Nova Scotia that hasn't yet been made public that is with officials there now. Can one of you please explain the value of this law to protecting the health of Canadians and what environmental racism means?
Sure, yeah. At a really high level, environmental, or the Act is designed to help ensure that Canada avoids instances of environmental racism and works to prevent those occurring and to address instances that or occurrences that are there. You did ask for a bit of a definition of what environmental racism is. It's essentially the connection between instances of it's the intersection between sociological and other factors and instances of adverse environmental conditions.
What?
Yeah, so an example would be, perpetually citing landfills adjacent to certain communities over other communities, right, which has happened in Nova Scotia. Can you provide this committee with an update on the status of the federal implementation of the law?
Certainly. So the government started some early engagement before, it would have been last fall, but some of that was suspended during the election period, during the RIP period. That has resumed. So engagement has been occurring since this fall, and studies are underway because one of the components of the requirements under the law was to conduct a study. So that work's been underway, and some early engagement with interested parties has begun to discuss the methodology for that work. The planning is to have some draft material to share so that we can have a more formal consultation begin on the planned approach to addressing environmental racism. That will happen in the early months of the winter, and the requirement is to table a study or to table a strategy by the spring, summer. So we're on track for doing that.
Excellent, thank you. Am I done? 30 seconds. Mr. Hubbard, Wind West provides Atlantic Canada with a great opportunity to grow our economy and renewable energy capacity. How will the recent changes made to the IAAC and the creation of the MPO help better facilitate these kinds of projects?
It's one of the big changes that we're moving forward on to be able to support the development of these projects is pursuing cooperation and collaboration agreements with provincial governments across the country. And the 2-year service standard that I mentioned earlier, to be able to provide certainty and clarity on and predictability on how these processes are going to operate. It will enable us to be able to focus federally on core areas within federal jurisdiction and be able to ensure that we've got rigorous, robust assessment of those key issues, including related consultations, and be able to provide predictability and certainty for those investors.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Bonnet, la parole est à vous pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mr. Bonnet, we have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our officials for being here. I want to come back to, okay, for you, is it possible to assess, I mean, in the agreement between Canada and Alberta, we're talking about an increase of the capacity of transport of the pipeline, Trans Mountain, from 300 to 400,000 barrels per day. If there is no carbon capture, how many emissions, GHG emission, when we have an increase from 300 to 400,000 barrels per day? Like, I mean, can you give us an average here?
I don't have the numbers with me, but we'd be able to provide something to the committee.
Vous allez pouvoir fournir. Est-ce que vous pouvez aussi...
You can give this to us, yes. Can you also give us the assessment for that and the project of pipeline of 1 million barrels per day so that we can have, you know, all of the numbers at once?
Sur la séquestration capture.
Regarding on carbon capture, which also is in the agreement, we're talking about the Pathway project or Pathways Plus, and this is for carbon capture. So this is a strong project for the government. There's, tax credits and so on. Can you tell us what will be the decrease in GHG, within this project?
But the idea being that that would be bringing down the emissions intensity associated with the oil in the oil sands. But again, there is no project at this point related to the pipeline, and we don't have the details related to the Pathways project, so we can provide estimates back to the committee.
Vous n'avez pas ou vous pouvez...
You don't have it, or you can't produce this data?
As it is available.
Dans l'entente.
In the agreement, Alberta, Canada, there is this idea to remove the regulation for clean electricity in Alberta. Are you able to tell us what are the emissions linked to the electricity production today in Alberta? And what would be the impact if we remove this regulation as it is scheduled?
As the minister said when she was here, what we have right now is an agreement between Alberta and Canada to try and find a pathway to secure an agreement. And so at this stage, we have a lot of work to do.
Désolé.
I'm sorry. I'm going to rephrase. What are the emission, the GHG emission in Alberta that are linked to the electricity production today?
Here with me. Okay. But what I am saying is that we are in a process where we have a significant amount of work to do with the province of Alberta to get to an agreement.
Donc vous ne savez pas du tout.
So you don't know at all. In the department, is there someone who assessed this?
Are not binding on the province until 2035, so the effective impact of that on the province now would be zero.
Attendez, vous êtes en train de me dire que...
You are in the process of telling me that if 2030 we are abandoning the regulation at that time, there would be zero impact on the GHG emissions between now and 2030 or 2035?
L'impact.
You asked the impact of the emissions that are linked to this regulation this year, and I'm telling you that for this year, there is no impact. I'm not talking for this year, I'm talking about 2030, the objectives that we are. Okay, in the action plan, there is a regulation on emissions. If Alberta does not have this obligation to reduce their emission, what will be the impact in reaching the objectives for 2030? for the future. As the minister explains, we will continue having conversations with the government of Alberta to see. Inaudible. It is impossible to know right now. Inaudible, too many people. Inaudible, too many people. So we have an agreement with Alberta. Mr. Guilbeault is saying, and I mean, he's a former Minister of Environment and the former Minister of Heritage. He's saying too much, that's the straw that broke the camel back, because among other things, this regulation is too important. This clean electricity regulation is too important. And you're telling me that with this agreement between Canada and Alberta, and there's no one in your department that has assessed the impact. I mean, Mr. Guilbeault is practically tearing his shirt because of this. So can you give this to me, this impact? I mean, what is happening? I mean, he represents 50% of GHG emission in Canada is coming from Alberta.
In the RIAS, which is the Regulatory Impact and Assessment Statement, those are transparently available for all folks, and so that will set out what the emissions impact are in Alberta when the CER comes into effect on January 1st, 2035,
okay.
Then that would have a sense of how it's going forward. So we are able.
So you don't know.
Aujourd'hui, vous n'êtes pas capable de
But today you can't tell me.
Megan, you have any additional information?
I believe, and I don't have the document in front of me, mais je crois que c'est.
But I believe that it's approximately about 100 megatons. By 2050. Which date? Which year did you say? Short answer.
Science.
I do not have the document, but if I remember correctly, it's approximately 100 megatons by 2020. Sorry, I mean 2050. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officials, witnesses, for being here today still. Go a little bit different angle. For ECCC officials, out of the 371 grants and contributions that Environment Canada gave in 2025, are any of the recipient organizations connected to Brookfield?
Yeah.
Recipient organizations connected to Brookfield?
Yeah, Entropy.
No. None of them.
Zero? Not one subsidiary of any?
One.
Nothing, okay. Yeah. What was the total dollar value of projects that were funded by grants and contributions from Environment Canada?
You mean from the beginning of the fiscal year?
For 2024, 2025.
2024, 2025? If you give me a second, I have that information.
Maybe simplified a little bit, a subset. What were, of those contributions, what were from projects abroad?
Projects abroad?
Yeah.
I have this, if you give me 30 seconds, but I think we are talking about...
No, I don't have 30 seconds. I
can
very
take
limited
2
time.
minutes, 2 seconds, 2
Okay.
seconds. We have about $38 million that went out last year.
38 million?
Yeah, and let me double check myself, just to make sure I'm giving you the right information. It's about 40 million.
Could you table that with the committee, please?
Yes, we can table that.
And that includes recipients and mission mandate?
Yeah.
Last year at committee, my Conservative colleague from Peace River Westlock pointed to the fact that many of the grants and contributions from Environment Canada were being sent to American universities, adding up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Has the department rectified this at all, or clarified the purpose, or redirected them domestically to Canadian universities?
I cannot answer that question. We need to look at that
Can you
one by
follow
one.
up with
Yes,
a written
definitely.
response, please?
Definitely.
Is the department currently working on ways to increase the accuracy and transparency in its modeling? This changed angle a little bit. In the modeling work that's being done, there's a lot of uncertainty as to how good those models are, whether they're fit for purpose, what is Environment Canada doing to fix that?
Yeah, we're continuing to work with partners inside government, in provincial governments, in academia. There are modeling workshops that are taking place. And yes, we are continuing to work on the quality of our model estimates. We've invested.
When do you expect that completed or being able to offer an improved or a useful model.
Some of those improvements are already incorporated into our models, and we are actually releasing projections at the end of December, the latest set. So,
thank you. The Commissioner's most recent audit found that the environment and climate change has still not identified which specific measures are essential to meeting the government's emission reduction targets. He raised the very same concern the year before, 2023. The meaning of this is that, well, this is a repeated deficiency, right? And there's no demonstrated improvement. Given that the department cannot say which, given that the department can't say which policies are driving results, whatever the metrics are.
there are challenges in isolating the GHG reduction impacts of individual measures just because of the nature of the, and actually no country really releases individual estimates of GHG reduction associated with individual measures in their climate plans, because it's actually a very difficult modeling exercise because of the interactive impacts between the measures because of the complementarities. So it makes it hard to distill the impact of the individual. But what we can do is...
That exactly illustrates the point of hanging all of these projections and legislation on the models that are broken, right, that don't work.
Models are not broken. What we're saying is that individual measures, it's much harder to have accurate estimates.
But you're impacting individual industries and individual Canadians.
Collective contributions of entire packages of measures, our models, and you'll find when we release our projections in the fall or at the end of the year, you'll be able to look at how they compare with other private sector models, the estimates of the PBO, Climate Institute, and so on.
I'm going to move to the Impact Assessment Agency. Is it customary to have many of your department grants and contributions given to individuals rather than organizations? And how many individuals receive grants for the Policy Dialogue Program and similar programs? We'll have to follow up to give an exact breakdown. Table that, please, with the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And the floor is yours, Mr. Grant, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. Actually, I just want to follow up on my colleague, Mr. Ross, his conversation with you, Mr. Hubbard, and it's good to see you as well. With respect to Indigenous title and rights, and what you said is that we don't have a prescriptive way of addressing those as targets and whatnot. Why do we have a target rather than a prescriptive drop dead day? What's the importance of that when it comes to the relationship building between First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and the government?
Thank you for the question. We've got more than 600 nations across the country, each with their own approach and processes. And so we found in developing our relationship that we really need to sit down and work constructively to develop a meaningful consultation approach and dialogue. And what works in one part of the country or with one nation doesn't necessarily work for another. And so as part of a pretty well-established and defined approach, following numerous court decisions and jurisprudence, following policy commitments that have been made, that developing a community-by-community approach to be able to adjust our approach to meet the needs and desires of communities on how they want to be engaged and how they want to be consulted within our processes is core to developing a meaningful consultation approach. So we do that nation by nation as part of our processes. While we have clear service standards and a 2-year commitment, and within those service standards, there's core parts of the process that we kind of define timelines around to provide certainty not only for business, but also for nations that we're working with on expectations and how best they can organize themselves to participate within our processes.
Great, thank you. So it's about mutual respect and recognition of the relationship. So I know now I'll just move on with my questions to the panel here. And I noticed part of the supplementary estimates that were particularly interesting to myself and to the file is a $673 million commitment to funding Canada's international climate finance program. Could somebody tell us a bit more about this program and how it helps countries transition towards low carbon economies while strengthening Canada's international reputation?
Very much for the question. So There we go. It's working. I'm obsessed with them working. So part of what we do when we are in international engagement with other jurisdictions through our work at the UNFCCC and other places is work with partner countries to find opportunities to lower emissions through international organizations and direct work with countries. It's part of a program that we have with Global Affairs Canada as well. This has been very successful, supporting the reduction of megatons around the world. I think this really speaks to the fact that the challenge of climate change is one of the global commons. Canada has a role to play, but we alone are not going to be able to solve an issue that is directly impacting us, impacting our changing climate, and imposing direct costs on us as a nation. So our work on international climate finance and climate change is really important to us being able to support others in taking action.
Thank you very much. We've heard the minister speak about the $2.75 billion allocated to ECCC and SSC to acquire a new high-power computing solution. Yeah. Can you tell us more about what that is and how it's helping ECCC and the Meteorological Service of Canada prepare Canadians for a rapidly changing environment?
I would say the first thing my father said to me when I came to the job is, cool, you've got the weather. And so, when we look at, when people think about environment in Canada, climate change, they think about the Meteorological Service of Canada. There is just a huge amount of data that ECCC and the MSC absorb every single day. And doing that in an AI-rich environment with the computing power, we need to have that computing power in order to do that in a reliable way. It's not just what's going to everybody's cell phones, it's what's going to support our military, what's going to support our Coast Guard, and it's also connecting with the Canada Space Agency to support Earth observation data as well. So this investment is what's positioning Canada to have the best kind of data to support us, to support our sovereign interests, and to position us to be able to reliably take care of our country and to be a good partner in the world.
Sorry, thank you very much. And another part that I'd like to ask about is the $13 million increase contributions to the Energy Innovation Program. Would you be able to expand on what that program does and how it helps Canada maintain a reliable and affordable energy system while moving towards a low-carbon economy, please?
Energy, is that LCEF?
I think that would be, LCEF.
Yeah. We might need to get back to you on that one if that's possible. And it's under our low carbon economy fund, but just the exact details of the program, we'd be happy to get back to you. And this is a program whereby we are able to provide funds back to provinces and territories and work in partnership with them to support their transition to a low carbon economy.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You still have about 30 seconds.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay, thank you. Monsieur Bonnet, la parole est à vous pour 2.5.
Mr. Bonnet, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will be very happy to take the 30 seconds of my colleague if it's possible. I would like to come back to the budget, the last budget. We were talking about an increase of the tax credits for the carbon capture, as well as an extension. Can you tell us what is the financial impact? What is the forecast for the 2030-2035 period? What kind of increase in money? Is it 3 billion? I think we had some officials told us about 3 billion. Maybe do you have numbers for us?
J'ai pas l'impact des.
I do not have the impact of the credits on an individual basis, but I believe that the Department of Finance estimated about 70 million of the money invested would be supported by the credit or the extension of the credits. You said 70,000. I mean, I'm sorry, 70 billion. I'm sorry. Okay, yes, that makes more sense. But in terms of cost for those tax credits, I know you don't have the number, but can you tell us what is what are the possible change for carbon capture? Honestly, the Department of Finance would be better positioned. Could you please check? I mean, so this is your main measure after all. The 1 billion trees program, it was there. There was $3.2 billion in that plan. Can you tell us how much was expended to this day? How much you think it's going to cost for 1 billion, which is half of the 2 billion, and what's going to happen with the rest of the money? I mean, I imagine there's be some money left over, right? Unfortunately, this is the responsibility of the Department of Energy and the Natural Resources, so we can ask them. Yes, it would be very appreciated. Thank you. If we continue, there is a cut of 15% in the Environment Department, and if I'm not mistaken, you are saying that there will be activities under the program. It will be a reduction or an elimination of some activities that are not a part of the main mandate of Environment Canada. So what are the activities that are not under the main mandate? Is there some help for the mandate? I don't know. I don't understand.
The results of the comprehensive expenditure review will be in the main estimate. So we'll look forward to coming back and speaking about, excuse me, the details of that when they are tabled in the main estimates in March. The year-over-year reductions are available to you in the budget, and so I won't repeat them there, but happy to if that is helpful. We do have about a 15% reduction, and the key items in there, as you noted, are reducing and winding down.
Désolé, je pense que je n'ai plus de traduction.
Sorry, I don't have interpretation right now.
Time.
Okay, I'm sorry, but your time is, but there was no interpretation. We're past your time. I didn't have the answer because there were no interpretation. Can we please check on interpretation?
OK. Il faudrait que je pense que quelqu'un parle en anglais.
I think somebody needs to speak in English so that I can check if there's interpretation.
OK, ça fonctionne, mais toute la...
Okay, it's working, but I didn't hear the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll return with the details of the comprehensive expenditure review when they are tabled in the main estimate, so I'll be able to do a breakdown at that point. I believe you have the numbers that were tabled, sort of the fiscal profile that was in the budget of how those will impact the department, so I'll be happy to talk about them then. I would say the 15% reduction that has us focused on core mandate, we're going to be looking at operational efficiencies and how we are able to do our work in a more effective way. But that 15% is not a target at environment and climate change. It is consistent if you look at the other departments that are sort of similar in size, medium-sized economic departments. So we are really looking at about the same size as equal departments. So thank you.
Mr. Leslie, the floor is yours.
Just, Mr. Chair, before we start the clock, if I could just get some clarity, is this the last round of this meeting, or is there another round due to the late start?
So there's Conservative, Liberals.
Like 15 minutes in the middle, started 2 minutes late because the minister didn't show up on time. 11:02 is when we started.
15 or 2 minutes.
So this would be the last round.
This is the last round? Okay. Thank you. Now I will proceed, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start with a question the minister did not answer effectively during her time here. At the International Maritime Organization, where this federal Liberal government voted in favor of what will be up to a $500 per ton carbon tax, has the department done any sort of modeling regarding this tax as to what the cost on average would be for Canadians?
By our colleagues at the Department of Transport, and so I think asking and inquiring from them would be the right way to go.
Okay. In terms of emissions reductions planning, if it were to go into place, would Canada take any credit for any emissions that were reduced from the tax?
So I don't have the answers to that. We will work collaboratively with our colleagues in another department to support them, but at this stage I don't have an answer to provide you with.
Okay. Picking up on my colleagues' questions regarding some of the policies that are being removed, I know it's 2035 for the introduction of the regulations on the clean electricity regulations. Has there been modeling done as part of the 2035 to 2050 emissions reduction plan? So I know we're doing this in segments. If both specifically Alberta were not to have that come into place in 2035, and or if there was carve-outs for other provinces and or the entire country post-2035, what impact would that have on our 2040 emissions reduction targets and or our 2050?
So for precision, you're asking about carve-outs related to the clean electricity regulations?
Yes, as per the MOU with Alberta from last week.
Okay, so to be clear, all of the data related to megatons based on what exists right now is in the RIAS that is public and transparently available. So I think that is thing one. With respect to any changes related to that, we have a lot of work to do with Alberta to determine what the path forward looks like in order to be able to determine if there would be adjustments to sort of our megaton allocation associated with that measure. The MOU does say that it is tier and other related rules that we are going to have to assess as we are doing that work with them up to April 1st. So not in any way trying to be difficult, but we do really understand that we have some work to do.
Let's get more right in front of us, things that are in place. My colleague was talking about the 2 billion trees. We have the EV mandate that's on pause. We have the removal of the consumer carbon tax. We have now, as per the document with Alberta, the MOU, the oil and gas cap will be lifted. Collectively, have we done any modeling as to this is the goal, this is the track, what do all these changes do to where we're actually planning to be?
So I would say this, there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that we are securing the megatons that are part of the emissions reduction plan. I would take industrial carbon pricing as an example there. There's work to do to make sure that that measure, that we've learned from the lessons of implementing it and make sure it works the way we want it to work. That is something that Alberta has agreed to. That's something, the budget committed to, a national approach to doing that, transparency around how the backstop is going to be implemented. So that's going to get securing the megatons there. Second part that I would say is the government is required to, and we will be tabling the emissions reduction plan progress report next month, or this month, we're in December. We'll be doing that here. That will talk about both where the government is in terms of its targets, but also what it takes to achieve 2030. That will provide the information I think that a number of members around this table are looking for, and that we'll be very happy to share and then come back and talk about.
Okay. You mentioned the gap, and you talked about strengthening the industrial carbon tax as a way to make that up. What other big ideas is the department working on? Unless everybody else is wrong, and the minister tried to say she is right, we are not going to hit these targets, and we have had a weakening of a number of policies that were aimed at achieving that target. So what big ideas is the department working on to try to actually achieve those targets by either 2030 or 2040?
So I think, in looking at the climate competitiveness strategy, the big thing is really working with the private sector, working with the investments in clean technology, ensuring that it is going to take a big lift to get there and to decarbonize, but really the thing we need to focus on is how we reduce emissions on these things. And that's coming from the 300 methane companies that are supporting sectors in reducing.
Any specific policies you'd like to mention?
No, investment in clean technology, RD&D, those are all things that are actually going to get emissions down while supporting our resource sectors.
Switching tracks entirely, have there been any employees from ECCC seconded over to the NPO?
We have been talking about that. I'm not sure what the status of the agreement is, but supporting them and doing the assessments and work that they need to do.
Okay. In terms of the EV mandate, Ms. Nichols, you had stated last time you were here about the ability to have much more choice if the EV mandate in place. We've had other testimony that has made it clear there's 110 EV models already available without the mandate currently in place. Could you explain to me how a future ban on gas-powered vehicles actually will will increase choice for consumers?
Well, I'll start, Monsieur le Président. Oh, time's up. I'll start just by saying that the policy is currently under review, so we are making sure that it remains fit for purpose. But I would also just add that while there are more and more models available, they are not yet available in all segments which are of interest to consumers. So we still have a way to go in increasing the variety of models.
Thank you. Mr. Fanjoy, the floor is yours.
Okay. It's just a lib round, and then this committee's done. So I don't want to sit here through a lib round, but thank you so much, Raven, for the 10 memberships. That's awesome. And then A True Canadian as well with the 5. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the committee, but I do reach out in chat and say thank you when it comes up. Also, Orc Cloud, you've joined the club. Thank you so much for the joining of the memberships and the gifted memberships. Really appreciate you guys. I've said in chat a few times, we are going to take a bit of a break here until question period. I've put the link in chat, but there it is again. So we've got about an hour until question period, and then we're going to stick around on the question period link for after, and we're going to check the cabinet shuffle because Carney's supposed to have a swear-in ceremony at around 3 o'clock. So we'll check to see if he's swearing in somebody. I'm anticipating he's swearing in somebody that's not a MP. He's going to have a minister that's not an MP. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll leave it there. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in and watching with the Environmental Racism Committee and the first hour we had with the tax havens, offshore tax havens. Tomorrow we've got the PBO and OGO in the morning, so that'll be pretty good, a little bit more juicy. But yeah, anyway, let's leave it here. I've got to go make some food and stuff on the little hour break, and I will see you guys shortly. There's the link in chat one more time, and cheers, guys. See you soon.